as I said in the last one, or was saying, after the Logitech's calamity, as I call it, there was yet again more chaos, more, just bickering and conflict among people in the community, and it actually got decently stressful at one point, and it ended up giving me a nosebleed because for some reason I got unlucky there, and whenever I actually do get stressed out, that tends to happen. A lot of people were freaking out about that because I mentioned it. Probably wasn't a good idea in hindsight. And people went on an even bigger meltdown. Not my smartest move. Anyway, there was talk among people in the community about, I am not kidding you, there was talk about having a rebellion or revolution in the server where people were thinking about overthrowing local and trying to correct the server in their own way, but I of course stepped in because I stepped in to stop that because that is just, it would be so stupid to try to overthrow local because there's a reason we're in the server. We love his videos. It's his server. If it wasn't, then we wouldn't be in there. It was comedy gold to me when the idea was proposed because local server, all of us joined it because of local. And if people did overthrow it just so they could fix the rules in their way, then what would be the point? We wouldn't have a reason to be there in the first place. Besides, it was impossible anyway, so I talked with a person about that, about their rebellion idea, and they agreed that it was stupid and should not be done. So that conflict was resolved pretty quickly. It was easy enough. I think it was around this time. I could be wrong, but I think it was around this time that I was selected to play test, and I believe this was also around the same time where I was chosen to voice act for the game 5 Hours on Copper 9. It was, I think it was around that time where I started to play test and voice act it, but anyway. So there was a lot to do around that time. Even more now, given that I have to balance a lot of things, but it came a bit later where there was a problem with a staff member. I mentioned him earlier. He was one of the ones that was, abusing power in the old days. it was I well, he abuses power now. I meant to. Wait. So many corrections I have to add there. He doesn't abuse power now, and he didn't do it in the old days, but he was one of the old moderators from the start after the raid who was selected, which I really didn't approve of at the time, but and he became after a long time after he became a moderator, around the time where I became an admin, there was a problem with him abusing power, basically. I have no problem with him. In fact, I consider everything to be kind of sad because he eventually left because he felt like a lot of people had a problem with him, but listen, this is just a catalog of what happened. It's not personal to me. I actually feel quite a degree of sympathy for him because he's been through a lot. We all really have been through quite a bit of the server. It's a place that's very important to a lot of people, and a lot of personal topics are brought up there. Anyway, he was abusing power and deleting literally anything that was posted that he didn't like, regardless of if it broke the rules or not. He was also very reluctant to actually listen to anyone who took issue with things he did. And he kept insisting that we enforced a rule that didn't even exist at the time. And when higher staff members agreed to add the rule, but also said that we aren't enforcing a rule that didn't even exist yet, he argued for there being corrupt moderation. And this is another reason why I didn't really approve of it at the start, and him being a moderator, is that he was complaining about corrupt moderation back in the day as well, whenever things didn't go his way. That he's still a decent guy normally, but just I never really talked to him, and he kind of just did some questionable things. There's a lot of people in the server who really care about him, which alone tells me that he does still, of course, deserve this respect, and you should show some respect to him too. I really don't want anyone to be hated irrationally because of this video. Anyway, this eventually led to me demoting him for power abuse in the server, and very shortly later, because he quickly accepted it and was fine with it, he handled it pretty well. But anyway, there was a big incident a little later. This one was the Pink corruption suicide incident. I should note, Pink corruption did not go through with it, and in fact there's a lot of controversy here. I'm not even going to get into too much of an opinionated area here, but because I have very mixed feelings about this whole situation, but it was sad and a dark situation. anyway, there was a time where, at this time, me and Pink Corruption were both admins, but Pink Corruption, he had a special role called Pink, because why not? And that actually was ranked above admin. It just had no special permissions of its own. He thought that because of this, because he was higher than admin, that admins or moderators couldn't give him warnings. But the thing is, he spammed a lot in the general chat, which at the time, he did that at the time. He doesn't do it anymore. But anyway, he was spamming in the general chat, and obviously that's against the rules. I issued a warning for that, but it got out of hand pretty quickly because he got mad about being warned by an admin who was lower ranked in the server, and said that lower members can't just warn his role Pink, but and he then deleted the warnings. But I told him that if that kept going up, then I'm adding an abuse of power warning for every time he deletes the warnings given to him and tries to get out of it. And of course, everyone in the entire staff team was backing me up on that one, because simply it's the same thing I had demoted the other guy for doing, abusing power. Abuse of power is just not really allowed. And anyway, I asked Local about this just to be sure before we did anything rash, and Local agreed that's not allowed and said to demote him. So anyway, Local said that he'd demote him, but he'd still be allowed to be a moderator. However, Pink Corruption got moody about that and decided to just be demoted all the way, and started talking about suicide and depression out of nowhere. But anyway, had a breakdown about and talking about that. At the time I was really worried, but this is like the first of about probably around 5 or 6 in the entire server. And, well, admittedly, all of them were faked, but, you know, it kind of, since I've been worrying about them so much and each time nothing has happened, I'm a little burnt out from caring about these events, but, you know. Anyway, I really tried to talk him out of it that day. If I was a fail, he kept ignoring me. He really didn't care what I had to say, but luckily, Local was able to talk to him. There were multiple instances of Pink Corruption having breakdowns about the same thing later on, but, you know, he was allowed to return to the server with owner permissions for a while, very briefly, but eventually he just went, back to normal. Anyway, you remember serial designation and the one who, specifically the one who was in local server at the start and had an NSFW profile picture and group chat up? Yeah, so he continuously begged local to let him back in and whined in the comments. So I decided that since he wouldn't shut up,